Hey, VC, Jeff here. I had a new album that came in a couple weeks ago that I just hadn't gotten around to showing yet, so I wanted to go ahead and do that today. Now, what I'm looking at with this one is I'm calling this basically the missing link when it comes to Lynyrd Skynyd. And let me just briefly go over that with you, what I mean by that. So if you're familiar, if you're a fan of Lynyrd Skynyd, or obviously everybody probably knows who they are. Just a real brief history of theirs. Of course, in 1977, he had a plane crash that killed some of the members, and the band basically dissolved in 1977. So what I wanted to look at was what happened after 1977, before 91, when they reformed and continued on with some other members. So we know that, the plane crash, people passed, and the remaining members, a lot of them worked together again shortly after that. So in 80 and 81, we had the Rossington Collins Band, which was Gary Rossington, Alan Collins, but you also had the bass player, Leon, and keyboardist, Billy Powell, and, you had some of the other members. It was almost kind of like a lot of mostly Skynyrd people. And they put out a couple albums, and then 80 and 81, and then that kind of fizzled, I guess. And then you saw Gary Rossington came back in 86 with the Rossington, just called Rossington. 88 he had the Rossington Band, and it was a lot of the same type of styles, but it was just mainly him working more or less as a solo. And in 1983, Alan Collins had the Alan Collins Band. So the Rossington Collins split into Gary Rossington did his stuff, Alan did his stuff. And like I say, for the Rossington Collins Band, you had bass player Leon, you had the piano player Billy. Also, in the Alan Collins Band, they worked with him also. So a lot of the Skynyrd guys did a lot of work together. Now, then there's kind of a quiet period in the mid-'80s as far as some of the members. So what I wanted to cover was that era after 83. We see the Alan Collins Band, and then there's kind of a gap there as far as aside from Gary doing some recordings, like I say, in the later 80s. But in that era, we have material, the missing link of what I want to call it, that is often overlooked, and that's the topic of today's discussion. So in 1984, after the Alan Collins Band, Leon and Billy Powell, the keyboard player and the bass player, went on to join another Florida band called Vision. And they put out an album in 1984. And that album came out as an independent release just called Vision, limited sales put out by the band. And then, basically went into oblivion. But that album has been reissued and remastered on vinyl for the first time since 84 when it was originally released. It is now referred to as Mountain in the Sky. Mainly, that's based on the song title, mainly because this original album recorded by the band did get them signed to a label, and their next album was just titled Vision. And so to avoid confusion, when this was reissued, they gave it a name rather than just calling it Vision. Because about half of these songs, 4 or 5 of these songs, I think, were re-recorded on the new version of Vision, and then some new songs were added. But what we've got here, and this is on Born Twice Records, we've got, again, Billy Powell, Leon Wilkerson, and then the rest of the band. Southern rockish, hard rockish, keyboard driven, piano playing. Billy tears it up on here, and it is just a great album. Now, this one, I honestly didn't even know about this back in 84, because, in the 80s, these kind of little independent releases were hard to find unless you actually knew the band. It wasn't until 85 when they did get signed and they released the album called Vision. This is where I discovered them. And again, some of the songs from that first album are in here. Much more polished album, as far as production and everything. This one hasn't been reissued. This is a copy I have. Actually, one of my favorite albums. I have 2 of them. I can't exactly. I think I bought a second one because the one I have is actually the one I had back in 85. And so you can kind of get these. These are still kind of available out there in sealed versions. There's still a handful of them floating around. So I bought a new copy to kind of update the version I have. I think the new copy I have, though, because it remained sealed, I think it's got a slight warp to it, but it plays fine. Anyway, and I found one of these in the wild not too long ago, earlier this year, and I bought it and sent it on to somebody else's VCLT. Anyway, this was the album I was familiar with. Love this album, and that's all I knew about him. 1985, band, one and done. That was it. Nothing else ever really got heard by him. Billy Powell. Now that album, the second album, does not have Leon Wilkeson, the bass player. It's just got Billy Powell on keyboards. This one, though, finally, after all of these years, has been reissued. And again, this has both of them playing on here. Now, it was reissued in 2010-ish on CD. So this was one of the first times, and the first time on CD. This was a reissue that Born Twice Records did in 2010. So it was great to have that. And so it is nice now, these years later, to have it released as a limited run, limited quantity vinyl release. So again, it is limited run. It comes with the insert with lyrics and a story and everything behind it. The album itself is just on black wax. Custom rings there. So, and again, it is part of the limited run. You can see the logo there in the white limited run vinyl. So it is very limited. You want to get these quickly before they go away. And like I say, so it was reissued on CD, as was the second album, finally officially released on CD, because these were not out back in the day, of course, in the 80s. And lo and behold, there had been a third album in 1986 recorded, and they also got the rights to put that out for the first time. I don't think it was ever released. It was probably like just in there. And this one does have Billy Powell on it also. So Billy Powell, 84 through 86 with the band Vision. We do have that. Just came out on vinyl. It's technically listed as a 2022 release, but it did come out a couple weeks ago. Love it. Love it. Was spinning this earlier today. And now the thing I say about it being often overlooked, in 2006, there was an album released by the record company called Lynyrd Skynyd Family. And it was a compilation of all the side bands of Lynyrd Skynyd. Not all of them. I mean, it had a lot representative of a lot of the Skynyrd family. So you had some Skynyrd on there. You had Rossington Collins. You had Alan Collins' band. You even had Johnny Van Zant, the younger brother who's the new singer for Skynyrd. You had some of his solo stuff. You had some of the Van Zant solo stuff, which is Johnny and Donnie, the singer from 38 Special. They have an album called Van Zant, a little more on the side of leaning heavily on the countryside. Great stuff, though. You had all of this type of stuff on there, but not a single mention of Vision. Of course, I guess I could say the same thing about Artemis Powell, the drummer. He did the Artemis Powell band, and they weren't represented either. And he was, he was in the band, and he was, I don't know if I can't recall if he did work on the Rossington Collins stuff, but in 87, when the band did a tribute show and they all got back together, he was there for that. And then in 91, when they put out their 1991 album, which was a return first studio album by Lynyrd Skynyd, Artemis was on that. So yeah, the 2006 didn't have anything from any of Artemis Powell's solo stuff either, but still no mention of the fact that Billy and Leon had done this work with them before returning back to Skynyrd. So it kind of saddened me when I saw that album. I was just like, how come it didn't get mentioned? But I don't know, maybe it was because of a smaller label, who knows. But that's it, though. Just wanted to show that I am excited. I'm hoping that the third album, at least, will come eventually on vinyl also. Obviously, I have the second, but I wouldn't complain if there was a remastered edition release of that. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Wanted to show that. Thanks a lot for watching. I will be back. Rock on and rock hard.